Hello and welcome to Sprott Radio. I'm your host, Ed Coyne, Senior Managing Partner at Sprott Asset Management. I'm really excited today to bring on Michael DiRienzo, President and CEO at the Silver Institute. Michael, thank you for joining Sprott Radio.
Oh, thank you, Ed. I look forward to the opportunity, and it's great to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you. Tell us a bit about the mission statement of the Silver Institute. What is your day-to-day goal?
So what we try to do, and what we do, I think, quite effectively, is we put out information on the market. So whether that be our World Silver Survey or some of our other reports, and just going back to the survey here for a second, it really is the most widely heard, viewed, read, retweeted piece on the silver market on an annual basis. And it's been going on since 1990. And we put all of our World Silver Surveys on our website. So it's not just a current edition. You can go back to 1990 and look at all these surveys, which have been produced by several firms over the years. These days it's being done by Metals Focus, which is an offshoot of the old GFMS team that was doing it for, I think, 18 years for us. But we also put out information on other aspects of the market. So, for example, this year, we'll be putting out a market trend report on bullion stocks and what is the mobilization price point where we start drawing those down to meet some of the demand. We're doing one later this year as well on silver and batteries. There's a lot of chatter out there about how much silver is used in batteries, and we kind of want to get to that issue and drill that down. And then later on this year, we'll be putting out a report on silver bullion investment, looking at the 4 key regions in the world that focus on coin and bar sales. And we'll also be putting out a report on why investors or why institutional investors should invest in silver.
Now, without spoiling any of those projects, who are some of the 4 key regions? Let's talk about that first, since you brought that up.
It would be North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia.
Got it. So basically the 4 corners.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And you brought up something I think that's really fascinating, which is you mentioned silver and batteries.
Mm-hmm.
Historically, silver has been viewed as a monetary metal or really a close cousin to gold as far as how it moves in the market. That seems to be changing. What's your thought on that? Has silver started to move away from gold and away from that monetary metal tag and become more of an industrial metal? What are you seeing out there in the work you're doing?
Yeah, I think it's a great point because, and if you just go back to gold for a second, gold really didn't react to high inflation. It may have to a degree, but it wasn't talked about among precious metals enthusiasts. And it wasn't reflected in the gold price with respect to inflation. There were more geopolitical issues and other issues going on with debt and so forth across the globe, and especially here in the United States, which has really propelled the gold price. Gold has about a 10%, maybe 7% uses with respect to industrial demand, where on the other hand, silver is well above 50%, 53, 54%. And a lot of investors like the duality of that silver being a monetary metal and an industrial metal. But as time goes by, it is clearly more of an industrial metal than it has been. And that's not to say that people don't invest in silver, because silver has done quite well this year as a price. The question remains, is it being used as a hedge against geopolitical risk? Is the play more so on the industrial side, or is it a combination of both?
Yeah, my guess would probably be a combination, although you're seeing silver used in just about every newer technology from solar, electronics, auto, medicine. You sort of name it, silver is popping up, which is interesting because if you go back, you said you guys have been doing this since the 90s. Silver was always viewed in the photo industry, and that was kind of it, right? And now it's got more usage than ever before. Maybe talk about some of those drivers, like how real is solar as relates to the demand of silver? What's going on there? And maybe talk about some of those other points I just mentioned, electronics, the auto industry, and so forth.
Sure, absolutely. The interesting thing about silver is on the demand side, you're absolutely right. It was not that long ago, 10, 15 years ago, where silver's use in photography was over 200 million ounces a year. And obviously in the early 1990s, with the advent of digital photography, that number became lower and lower to the point last year it was about 26.1 million ounces of silver, going from 200. But what has happened in the meantime? We like to say that there's almost not a day goes by where a new scientist or an OEM, somebody who's involved in the industrial side of the complex, does not come up with a new idea on how to use silver. And what has expanded in most recent years, of course, is silver's use in electrical and electronics. I mean, we had in 2023, last year, about 445 million ounces used in E&E. This year we project it's going to grow by about 9% to about 485 million ounces per year. And the chief consumer in that category is photovoltaics. The fact of the matter is it's continuing to grow. It grew 64% in 2023, and we project it's going to grow another 20% in 2024 from about 193.5 million ounces to roughly 232 million ounces. So look at, there is pressure on governments, pressure on consumers to reduce the carbon footprint of this world and have a less reliance on fossil fuels. And it's clearly working. And China is absolutely driving that coverage. If you look at China last year with respect to photovoltaic demand, it grew, oh my God, over 90% of global panel shipments came from China last year.
Wow.
And the United States, for example, is also using a lot of PV. And we think that number is going to grow here as well. And Japan as well. So not just in photovoltaics, but also the electrification of vehicles, the charging stations, the infrastructure surrounding that application is also growing. Now, EVs I see are sort of plateauing right now, but it doesn't mean they're not being sold. We've had over a 25% increase in global EV sales in just the last 5 years. So silver is a key component. While it's not in the battery, it's used in all the contacts, the relay switches. It operates your infotainment systems. It operates your safety systems. It starts your car, rear window defrosters, and so forth. And, Ed, it's interesting. As these cars become more complex and as the advent of autonomous driving becomes more universally adopted, you're going to see more and more silver being used in vehicles.
You've heard in the past about silver in the medical field. Jewelry was always talked about from silver demand. You don't see that as much anymore because solar has become so popular and the auto industry has been consuming more of it. Any other spaces out there that people should be looking at or paying attention to as it relates to the demand side?
Silver has been used in health and medicine for thousands and thousands of years. The ancient Phoenicians used to store their wine and water in silver-lined jugs, and they didn't know the reason why, but they did because it killed bacteria, kept the product longer and more fresh over a period of time. And today you're seeing silver in hospital rooms. You're seeing silver as a coating in walls on emergency equipment. Silver bandages. It helps heal a burn victim's wounds faster. I mean, it's a natural antibiotic. And as antibiotics become, over time and with repeated use, less functional for certain individuals, silver is also coming to the rescue. So while it's a small market size, 10, 20 million ounces of silver a year, if you add in water purification, you get to about 30, 35. Silver plays a key role there.
Well, given all this demand, let's shift for a second to the discovery and extraction side, the miners.
Sure.
Given this demand, is it realistic that we can keep up with this, or what are we seeing on that side of the ledger?
Well, it's a question we see an awful lot, and for the last 3 or 4 years, mine production is not rapidly, but it has decreased over time. Decreased about 1% last year. We had initially called for about another 1% decrease this year, and that may be even a little bit higher because what we're facing in these mining regions, significant mining regions like Mexico, Peru, not so much China, although it is the number 2 country with respect to overall silver mining, is that these geopolitical issues are real and they're confronting this long-standing tradition of mining in these countries. So you factor in that with some labor issues, strike issues, and so forth. It's becoming a challenge. The mining companies are adapting well in those particular countries. And I think that, this will level off one day. I mean, 1% doesn't sound significant, but if you look back over the course of the last 4 years, it's gone from 836 to 823 million ounces of newly fresh mined silver coming to the market. So it's an issue, and we have said that when you look at that and overall demand, there's a deficit in the market. We think the deficit this year actually is going to increase. We think it's going to be even bigger than it was over the course of the last 3 successive years of deficits. And this year we're looking at about a 215 million ounce deficit when you look at mine supply, recycled scrap coming to the market, and overall demand.
So that includes recycle. That's what I was going to ask next. Can recycle fill that gap? But that's including recycling currently in those numbers.
It does indeed.
So what's the answer? Does silver just have to go higher then, or what happens?
Well, I mean, listen, there has to be a certain price point where the mobilization of these stocks are actually underway. And these stocks have been drawn down. I mean, you recall last year or the year before, the overwhelming demand in India for silver to meet not only their industrial side, but more importantly, their investment side. These stocks were drawn down and they were sent to India. And that's just the way it is. And that's just, it's continuing to a smaller degree today. But nonetheless, that's what's happening. I read stories earlier this year where India has imported more silver in the first 4 months of 2024 than they did in all of calendar year 2023.
Wow.
So this phenomena continues. And there is above ground stocks of silver. We have a great chapter on that very issue in our World Silver Survey, which you can find online. I believe it's chapter 7, and it deals with bullion stocks. And then right after that, we talk about bullion trade.
Let's talk a bit about the risk. We spent a fair amount of time talking about demand. We've talked a bit about opportunities. What about the risk? What are some of the things out there that people should maybe be concerned with when they're thinking about allocating to silver to help diversify, as you say, from an investment standpoint, their portfolio? What risk should someone be thinking about or looking out for?
So we have enough silver to meet current demand. The risk would be which would be good for the silver price, would be if we start to mobilize these stocks above ground, these above ground silver stocks, to the point where we're not only in a significant deficit, but we can't meet the demand. And there's been plenty written about the electrification, the green energy economy, and what that means to silver and what it potentially can mean, not immediately, but 4 or 5 years down the road. So that is a risk, okay? But that's good for silver investors. But it's not so great for those manufacturers. Mm-hmm. And people think that a higher silver price, 30, which we are at now, $40, $50, $60 an ounce is a win-win for everybody. It is if you're an investor, but it's not if you're a manufacturer of any product that consumes silver. So back in 2014 and 15, when silver was starting to get some wind behind its backs with respect to solar panel, these companies that manufacture solar panels began their thrifting process. And they continue to thrift today. So the risk there is thrifting in end-use applications. But in that particular instance, with respect to solar panel, they've looked at a whole host of other metals, and not even metals, to see if they can store that electricity for a longer period of time, and as well as have those systems operate to the degree they do with silver. And they can.
What else should investors or potential investors be looking out for or thinking about as they consider silver as part of their potential portfolio?
Well, look, I mean, silver has got a bad rap over the years, poor man's gold and all that. And we don't believe that one iota. We have a saying, if copper's the driver of the superhighway, silver is the glue. I mean, silver, you need silver for everything. Everything that has an on and off switch has silver in it.
That's great insight. And I know you mentioned it earlier, but for investors and just people who want to be educated on the space, walk us through again the best way to track down you and your work at the Silver Institute and some of the readings that you would suggest people go to.
So we're at silverinstitute.org. Everything we put out, Ed, is free of charge. And in some cases, if you want a hard copy of the World Silver Survey, we could charge a nominal price for that. But one of the best ways to follow us is to sign up for our information, which will be emailed to you at info@silverinstitute.org. Or you can go to our website and click a button and fill out a form there. We're also very, very active on LinkedIn at Silver Institute, as well as on Twitter, or X, I should say, at Silver Institute. So we're constantly putting out information on the market through those social media platforms, but also 4, 5, 6 reports a year on the market, which would be sent to you the moment they're released.
Yeah, I know. I rely on them for my own personal intel. It's surprising how many people ask me about silver, and without your guys' information, I don't think I would know what the hell I'm talking about. I barely do as it is, but you guys at least help me get halfway down the aisle. So thank you for that.
Thank you for keeping us in mind. I mean, we are the best source. We're a global source. We've taken on 7 new members this year already. And,
wow.
And those members are very diverse. Our membership is growing. People are excited about silver, and we think we have a good story to tell. That's what we do, and that's how you can follow us.
Awesome. Well, Michael, thank you again for making the time to join us today. Once again, my name is Ed Coyne, and you're listening to Sprott Radio.
This podcast is provided for information purposes only from sources believed to be reliable. However, Sprott does not warrant its completeness or accuracy. Any opinions and estimates constitute our judgment as of the date of this material and are subject to change without notice. Past performance is not indicative of future results. This communication is not intended as an offer or solicitation for the purchase or sale of any financial instrument. Any opinions and recommendations herein do not take into account individual client circumstances, objectives, or needs, and are not intended as recommendations of particular securities, financial instruments, or strategies. You must make your own independent decisions regarding any securities, financial instruments, or strategies mentioned or related to the information herein. This communication may not be redistributed or retransmitted in whole or in part, or in any form or manner without the express written consent of Sprott. Any unauthorized use or disclosure is prohibited. Receipt and review of this information constitutes your agreement not to redistribute or retransmit the contents and information contained in this communication without first obtaining express permission from an authorized officer of Sprott.